Hi everyone, we're going to talk about networking in this presentation. And networking is one of those subjects that I feel like our book doesn't really go in depth as much as it probably should. Networking is really, really important because it's kind of like that missing link between, you know, putting together that great resume or portfolio and actually getting someone to talk to you so you can get an interview and actually just be seen. So if you like think about how people used to get jobs a long time ago, my goodness, you could just get a classified ad and then circle it and then go to the thing and put in an application and then hope that they'll call you back. And it used to be like that. My dad is of a certain generation that is how you got a job. But today there's a lot more competition. There's just a lot. I feel like there's just a few more hurdles to overcome, and so we can't just say, "Oh, make a perfect resume," and just send it out, and somebody will probably call you. Some of the jobs that we are applying for, or we will be applying for, may have a lot of competition. So, networking is the one little thing that can kind of put you a little bit ahead of the competition, so that you can at least be seen, and so that somebody who can make a good decision about your future at that particular company could actually, maybe talk to you. So, um, before we get into it, I kind of want you to think about how would you describe networking? If somebody was to ask, maybe a friend of yours, how would you actually describe that to them in your own words? So just take a minute and think about how you would do that. All right. So the next few images are, some of the things that kind of come to my mind. When I was doing my master's degree, even was talking with different people, different professors, and I, wanted to break into a different field of work, and I just kind of felt like, wow, I'm so removed from that at this point. I'm learning about it, but I'm not in that industry, and how do I even get my foot in the door? And typically they would say something like, well, you just need to network your way into that. And then they would just pretty much leave it at that. I had like 1,000 questions about how do you actually do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about those kinds of things today. And at least, maybe get your brain working on some different ways that you could possibly network. So, you can go to networking, like networking groups, and they're not all bad, they're not terrible. It just might not be everybody's style. So, for some people, go look for a networking group online. You can literally just do a Google search and find a group that is appropriate for the type of networking, professional networking that you want to do. Um, but for me, my personality, and this might resonate with a few of you, is it just feels like let's get really dressed up so that we can impress other people. And I don't know. So you get a lot of these kinds of folks in your face. Just ah, it's a little overwhelming, and sometimes that person that you just really don't want to talk to or trying to avoid, and gosh, you're trying to think about what do I even say to the next person I speak with. And there's a lot of this going on, a lot of people taking their business cards and exchanging them with you, which is all well and good. And you feel like, wow, you walked away from this networking event with a bunch of business cards. But the question kind of, leads you to think like, well, what do we do with it next, right? What am I going to do with all these cards? Kind of feels like, hello, my name is, who cares? You won't even remember anyway. I feel like that interaction doesn't always feel super genuine. It feels a little forced, and I'm not entirely certain how to follow up with some of these networking events. So I want you to think about some other opportunities that are out there that you're probably doing already. I mean, honestly, you have networks and you might not even consider them as a network. And you are networking and you may not even realize you're doing it. So, it could be this. It could be a family party. It could be a friend's party. It could be an acquaintance party. Because at these parties, it's not just the people that you know and love, but it's also the people that you know and love know, right? And so you never know how this could play out. Somebody that you could meet at one of these events that you've been invited to. So it could be perhaps a hobby of yours. Maybe it's a sport that you're into, or it could be something that if you have kids, what your kids are into, because you never know who's in the audience with you, or maybe the other group of people that are there if it's like your kid's soccer game, let's say for example, who the other parents could be. This is such an outdated picture. It makes me laugh every time, so I keep it in there. But this is like when Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise were still married, and this they went to go watch their kids play soccer. And it just made me think, you just never know who's in who's in the crowd with you. This is actually from the Feast for Southeast. So that particular event was one where I just met lots of people. Everybody met lots of people from all different walks of life, and I think that was just a wonderful example of an opportunity where if you're doing a little bit of community service or doing something that really interests you, whatever that might be, it's another great opportunity to meet people. And then because of what we did with the community service with Feast for Southeast, we ended up at some event invited by other community groups to attend, and this was the mayor at the time, so we got to talk with him and spend some time with him, which was kind of cool. But I just love this picture. This is one from Feast for Southeast, the Thanksgiving meal that was provided for the community every Thanksgiving. And honestly, these are just random people all sitting together and having a meal. How cool is that, right? So that's a perfect opportunity to meet somebody new and network. So yes, this is networking because you just never know where a conversation or a friendship could lead to. This is a restaurant that's actually here in Portland. It's called Beast. It's a really neat concept, and I was just thinking about how even restaurants and maybe even coffee shops have places where there's opportunities to meet people. This particular restaurant, there's like 2 seatings a night, and you eat with people. So you bring, if you go by yourself, that's fine, or you bring a friend, you sit with your friend, and then you're seated with a bunch of other strangers that you don't know. But the thing that kind of brings you together is your, love for food, and the discussions and the conversations that happen at the table are just really, really fun. And again, maybe nothing happens of it, or maybe something really great. Some great networking happens here. If you've not read this book, if you know the company Zappos, the CEO has written this book called Delivering Happiness, and they are a company that's well known for doing some really innovative things to build great company culture, to do really wonderful things in business, not just for the people that work there, but also for their customers. It's pretty cool. But anyway, in his book, he talks a lot about networking, and if you read the book, I highly recommend it. It's very conversational, very easy to read, and he talks about how to network. And he says this great quote, right, about not trying to network for the sake of networking, but to just build the number and depth of the friendships that you have, right, where the friendship itself is its own reward. Now, if you read through this story, you'll start to realize that a lot of the top people in Zappos, which is a very successful company, they are friends of his that he's kind of gathered along the way. And he kind of discusses like how that happens, through interesting things that he's interested in, like weird hobbies, like poker, which is a very interesting hobby. And he talks about how poker is related to business and how he's met some really interesting people there. I think he even mentioned that he was really into raves, which is kind of interesting at one time, and he met some really great people there. So, anyway, great book, but neat to see how he's kind of collected great people along the way. And he also said that a lot of times you don't even realize, you just meet the people because you think they're really interesting. And you don't really see like how it all plays together, as in like how, their skill set might be useful to you, or the other way around, for at least a year, maybe more, before you can kind of see how that fits together, where there might be an opportunity to work together. So anyway, I just thought that was a really interesting take on networking. So why should we network? There's all sorts of good reasons to network, right? Trying to get the job that you want, obviously. If you're trying to get into a new field that you don't know anything about, it's a great way to kind of get some more information. And yeah, it also helps you with your interviewing skills. And yes, networking isn't interviewing, it shouldn't be considered that, but just the skill set of talking to somebody new, and having a conversation with them that's interesting and thoughtful. It takes practice, right? Especially in today's world, where we communicate a lot of times through text or through email. So actually being in real time with somebody and having a conversation with them can be really really good, and it's good to have practice that. So, successful networking. All right. Well, obviously, people can be a little nervous about networking. I mean, me personally, definitely was one of those things that kind of made me a little antsy. It still kind of does to some degree. But you know what? Everybody has valuable connections, and you don't have to do a networking thing where you totally, in a sea of people you don't know, unless you love that kind of thing. There are people that thrive on that, so do it if that is your style. But it's okay to know that not everybody has the same, um, networking style. So it can be some of the options that I showed you earlier. Right? So find your style and stick to that. And yes, everybody has valuable connections. So think about places where you might be making connections. Um, you could be, just through school, people in your class, your instructors, people that you worked with, people that you used to work with, people that you've done projects with, whether they've been paid or not. I mean, these are great people to consider as a character or networking reference, right? So they're everywhere. You have good networks. And networking is definitely not bothering people because, honestly, if you're asking people questions because you're, genuinely interested in them and what they do, people really like to talk about themselves. They just do. So, and people are genuinely good and do love to help others. So, I think that, so don't think that you're bothering anybody by networking. All right, so here's another great, just a little chart to kind of jog your brain a little bit about who might be in your network, and you can kind of just do this for yourself. You can either write it down or just do it mentally, and just think about all of the places where you meet people and you have a good rapport with them, right? Okay. um, Other places to network: professional associations and conferences. Every career field, every career path has a professional association. If you're a chef, there's a professional association for chefs. If you're a bricklayer, you have one of those for bricklayers. I mean, honestly, anything you can think of, there's probably a professional association for it. So I encourage you to go ahead and look for that. Go online and Google it. For example, people that do project management, there's a big um, networking association that's called Project Manage or PME. I think no, it's like project management. Anyway, it's a big group for project managers. Oh, PMI, it's Project Management Institute. That's what it's called. And there's a chapter in every state. We actually happen to have one here in Portland. And if you go on their website, you can actually see like they meet once a month. They have a networking, like kind of a cocktail social, and then they have a dinner where somebody comes and talks about something happening in the industry. And as you can imagine, what if you're a student? This is an awesome opportunity to go find out about that industry, to talk to people that are actually doing the work. And by the way, most professional associations have special memberships for students at a discounted rate, and they are super excited when students are excited about what they do for a living. So, I mean, now is the time to go find those professional associations. And so, um, anyway, do that. Go look it up. Regional career fairs and events, also great places to meet people, community groups, family parties, trade publications. Go look in trade publications and see what kind of information that you can find. LinkedIn is a great place to do that as well, and of course, people that you already know through old jobs. All right, this last piece is called an elevator pitch. I'm not making you do it. This is just some information that can help you in the networking arena. So there is an origin to this idea of an elevator pitch, and you may have heard of this topic, like what is your elevator pitch? And some of us have been made to do it in school or in high school or whatever. But it actually the term comes from old Hollywood, where there's screenwriters and movie execs. They used to work in the same building. So the screenwriters would go to lunch, right? And then the movie execs would go to lunch, and the screenwriters would want to pitch ideas to them. So they'd wait for them to come back from lunch, and they'd hop in the elevator with them. And so from the time that they would go from, the ground floor to the top floor of the building where the executives worked, they would pitch some ideas for movies, right? And hopefully something stuck, and they would be called back for a longer conversation about this new movie. All right, so what is an elevator pitch? It's 30 seconds to a minute, but you know what? Honestly, it's how do you answer that question when somebody meets you? Tell me a little bit more about yourself. Even that question in an interview, how do you discuss that? What do you talk about? So that basically the idea of like think about how you would answer that. And it feels really weird to answer these questions and rehearse this with yourself, but it's really important to do so. So do it a couple of times, practice with yourself, sit in your car as you're driving, and then practice like, what do you say when somebody asks you, who are you, or what do you do, or tell me a little bit about yourself. You could answer them with all sorts of different things, right? And think about what makes you a little bit different than everybody else. Maybe there's something, a unique aspect about you that you should be able to share right off the bat. So today's elevator pitch is not necessarily like a speech, a rehearsed speech necessarily, but if like remember the main points of what that conversation could sound like, right? And be prepared for this conversation by crafting your story, because the way you tell your story is really, really, really important. So I want you to think about these things maybe even before you come up with your elevator pitch. Do you have negative self-talk? Do your words talk down your accomplishments? Many of us happen to do that, like, oh yeah, I used to do that, but and then make an excuse for like it really wasn't that hard, or it really wasn't that exciting. Yeah, do you say that about the things that are your accomplishments? The stories we tell ourselves are really critical. You have the power to tell your story, but you got to tell it well, right? And tell it honestly. Um, and your resume, your online presence, the LinkedIn, the cover letter, all of this is part of the story. So it should reflect, in the way that you speak when you talk with somebody about, who it is, who you are, and what it is that you do. So it's part of your personal branding, which I think is really, really cool to think about. And it should help you to tell some of your story. And anyway, so some of the prompts, of course, meaning like some of the questions that people could ask you, or sound a little bit like this. And I think we've kind of mentioned that in some of the last slides. And of course, maybe focusing it down a little bit more if you're trying to pitch a particular product, or getting someone to work with you in your business, make it a little bit more specific if that's necessary. And here's just a little memory jogger of some things that you could include in your 30-second commercial of sorts, right? Your little pitch of like who you are. You could take more time and read through that on your own. But anyway, it is a way to connect and continue a conversation later. So like, don't feel like you got to say everything in your 30 seconds, but give us your highlights. Like, tell us a little bit about some of your major accomplishments, right? Okay, and that is the end of networking. Okay, and I did want to tell you a really quick story. Actually, I'm gonna wrap it up with this very quick story. So, I transitioned several times in my career, and as I mentioned earlier, I had some questions about networking, and I felt like nobody could really answer them for me. One of the books I really want to recommend to you is called The Go Giver. Go Giver is the name of it. You can get it on Amazon. And it is wonderful. It's a great book. It's told in a story format. And it's about a guy who's looking for a little bit of help at his job. And they tell him about this guru, and this guru gives him homework. Well, it's just a fun story. But every little piece of homework is like a little nugget of information about networking. And it is so good it's a fun read and is really, really powerful. So I really recommend that if you're looking for additional resources about networking. So go out there, network, have fun, put yourself out there, tell the people that you really trust, the people that are thinking about you at all times, what it is that you actually want. If you're looking for a specific type of job, as you're out and about just doing their business, they're thinking about you. You're in the back of their mind. And a lot of times the people in your inner circle have acquaintances or meet people throughout the day that could be that, like, they could serve as that kind of that missing link between you and the job that you want. Okay. All right. Well, let me know if you have any other questions about networking. It is a super fun subject to talk about, and we could probably go on for hours, but I won't do that to you. So I will see you all online.